Hi everybody, Giselle Grenier here from artplace.ca. I am so cold right now. It's so rainy and it's cold outside so it's a good time to be in the studio to make some miniature art. So the theme for this particular piece of art is based on kitty cats. There's no such thing as an ordinary cat. I'm going to be using some elements gifted to me by my friend Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl. And I'm going to make a small piece of art with a little quote. So let's go down to the table and see what I've got prepared. So I've got everything assembled here, and I'm actually going to be using my extended palette. And so I brought these colors out, and what I've got my phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, and I'm not going to use any of the quinacridone magenta, naphthol red light, or Dairylid yellow. So I've taken that out. Hansa yellow light, yellow oxide, transparent yellow, iron oxide, burnt sienna, titanium white. So the additional colors, which is in the extended palette, are these ones here. I may bring out some burnt umber, I'm not sure, but we'll see. I'll put those over there. I've got my DecoArt Media, the white gesso and the matte medium. Oh, and these are the fluid acrylics. If I was making this on a larger piece on canvas, I'd use the traditions, but I like the fluid acrylics because this whole piece is based on transparency. And I'm using elements gifted to me by Cheryl. I am so excited to be doing this. So I've got little kitty cat here printed on tissue. Don't ask me what the stamp is. I have no idea. Hopefully Cheryl can shed some light on this. And she also gave me some cutouts and some dried flowers. I've never used dried flowers for what I'm going to be making. I've never used it for this purpose, so it'll be really interesting. And then this came in a bit of a larger sheet, so I tore the paper, and I have that here. My quote for this is, "There's no such thing as an ordinary cat." And it was I printed this on canvas paper, but it was still kind of thin. And from another piece that I did, I thought, no, I'm going to start mounting this stuff on cardstock. So I just took scrap cardstock. This is from a dendritic print from one of the Book of Backgrounds. And so I just used this matte medium, put a layer underneath the quote on this, fuse it together, and then I also put a layer on the back, and I'm just going to set that to dry, and I'll cut it at the end. So I'll move that over there. All right, and I've got some brushes. I've got my Bristle Bright. I've got my glaze, my round, and over here, which I prepared the quote already, is my little shader. These are the Aqualon with the acrylic handles, and this is a soft grip. I'm not sure if I'm going to need the palette knife, but I have it ready just in case. So to get started, I've got a piece of cardboard packaging. This is from some protein bars, and I've already prepared a very light layer, and I'm going to use this one as the back, but so I can show you here. If you see my videos before, you know where I'm going to be doing, but in case this is your first time, I'm just taking some of the gesso on the Bristle Bright and applying it on there. It's very important to apply the gesso, if you're using cardboard packaging, to apply a layer of gesso to the side that's shiny, because if you're trying to glue stuff on there or paint, because it's shiny, it has a coating on it, the paint won't stick to it. So by adding gesso, you're creating some tooth. Think of this as a primer. And it's best to have, if you're doing a flat piece, it's best to have many thin even layers, and let them dry. But you can also add a much thicker layer and really use some texture in there if you want it to be very textured, but you have to let that completely dry before you do anything on it. Just because the top feels dry, that doesn't mean what's underneath isn't. Like if you're an oil painter, you know what that means. All right, so I'm going to put this aside, and I'm going to, while that's drying, I'm going to paint this little guy. So I'm going to be painting this a yellow green, and I'm going to get my stuff out of the way here. So let's I'm going to take a little bit of phthalo blue, a little bit of Hansa yellow light, a little bit of burnt sienna. This is where the burnt umber is. Well, I'm thinking the burnt umber are probably no, let's use a yellow ochre. Let's use a yellow, just a little bit. And I'm going to take this round brush, and it's already damp from another project, so I'm just going to gently squeeze out the excess water. And to mix that, I'm going to basically paint this a kind of I don't want a neon green, so kind of a yellowy green, brighter at the tips and then a bit darker on the bottom. So I'm going to take the Hansa Yellow Light, touch it into the phthalo blue, and oh my god, that's so intense. That's really bright. That's really bright. That's like garish bright. I'm going to touch that into a little bit of yellow oxide, which neutralizes it. Okay, and let's just roughly paint that. See how I'm not using a lot of paint? I don't want to saturate the paper. If you saturate the paper, it's just going to start curling because the paper's absorbing all the water. So I'm applying very light layer. Dry it. That's a free heat gun. And just apply a bit more. Okay, so you see that I've got some white pieces here. I'm going to rinse my brush and really blot that excess out there. Let me get a paper towel. And take just a little bit of the Hansa Yellow Light. Just touch over, so where the white pieces are, the unpainted areas, this will really brighten that top part. Again, make sure not too much paint. And then I'm going to take this mixture here and go with a little bit of burnt sienna. And I'm just going to go over. See, the burnt sienna makes it more opaque, so you just gotta be a little bit more careful. There is something, oh, there's some matte medium on there. A little bit more. The burnt sienna neutralizes. It's a reddish, orangey red, brown, neutralizes. A little bit more burnt sienna. Let's just touch a little bit on that stem, that branch. And where the sun wouldn't shine, that's where a lot of that dark would go. Like so. Like so. Take that. And I'm going to leave the paint there because I'm going to need it for something else. So put that aside. Now, you can paint the back too if you want, depending if you were going to have this curled or whatever. I'm not going to bother because I'm going to actually fuse that down. This isn't dry yet, so I'm thinking, okay, do I need to do any prep work? No. Now I'm going to dry this with the heat gun. This was a very thin layer, so I'm going to dry this with the heat gun. Now see this, how I'm kind of bending that? It's going to be a little bit flexible. If you are doing your card on something like this, where it's hard, you can actually use a glue gun because it won't bend. But a glue gun on this, especially if you're using, let's say, buttons, sometimes the buttons will pop. I had that happen a few times. So now my general rule is if it's flexible, it's matte medium. So a flexible glue. If it's something hard, I can get away with a glue gun. All right, so I'm going to go and dry this now, and we come back, we'll starting to collage our pieces. I'm going to paint the card now, and I've also decided I'm going to take this barcoding part and put it on the bottom. And I'm going to paint this using ultramarine blue and Hansa Yellow Light. And this blue is more on the violet side, so the green turns out to be just a little bit different. It's a much more toned down green. And where phthalo blue is a very high staining blue, very intense, the ultramarine blue is not as strong. And if you're never sure what it actually looks like, just paint it on a white card and you'll see the actual color. Add a little bit more yellow to that. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to add a little bit of matte medium to that. I love these acrylic handles I can use as a palette knife too. So So this will make the paint transparent, as well as, instead of watering it down, which if you add too much water, it weakens the strength of the pigment. This doesn't weaken the strength of the pigment. There we go. And by doing this, I get to retain the texture, keeping it transparent. I can see a little bit what's underneath. This is, what is that? That's called unpainted paint. Unpainted paint. Unmixed paint. And keeping, again, I love texture because this is going to be almost like a little flower garden for the kitty cat. So I want to have a lot of strokes in there. If you prefer a more soft, smooth gradation type of feel, that's fine. I'm not going to worry too much about here because we're going to have to underlay some white because I don't want the kitty cat to be green. I'm going to take a little bit more blue, a little bit more yellow. I'm just going to put a little bit more in there. So that's going to be our base. And no, we're not finished yet. Okay, put that brush over there. Now I do have to move that. Oh, I might as well clean that matte medium out because I need fresh stuff. I'm going to hit this with the heat gun. Now, when you're on your table like this with the heat gun, you got to be careful because you got tissue and paint. The paint will dry, the tissue will blow away. So what I like to do is just kind of hold the card in my hand and away from everything. Start off about 12 inches away. When my fingers start to get, when I feel the heat, I'll move the heat gun a little bit closer. But if my fingers if it starts to burn, pull the heat gun away. And that's what I use as my gauge. So as long as I can comfortably hold the card with the heat gun at a certain distance, I know that this isn't going to burn. So just to show you, I'll start off close. Because I know what the heat gun can do. And as it starts getting hot, I'll pull it away a bit. Always keeping the heat gun moving, turning. It doesn't take long. But the thicker the application of the paint and medium, the top may feel dry, but underneath it won't be dry. So you got to make sure that that completely dries. So with this as well, it's warm. Let it come down to room temperature before you start putting paint on there. So I'm going to get the matte medium out again. Always watching for chaos because when I have paint on here, she usually makes an appearance. And I'm going to take the large glaze brush and I'm going to apply a coat of matte medium. And now we're going to start with our tissue. And you may say, well, why did you paint the background then? Well, because when painting the background, I don't know why I do that all the time. The paint will show through with this tissue. And I've also decided this time I'm not going to spray the tissue with water to relax it because the pieces are so small. Always going back over with another layer of matte medium. Oh, there's a piece of paper there. And as I'm doing this, the more layers of medium that I'm applying, it just makes the card stronger and stronger and stronger. So this is a really good way to use up all your pieces to build up your card. I actually may have to get a bit more. Just going to use up everything. What I want to make sure though is where the kitty cat's going to be, that there isn't any texture, anything sticking up. There we go. And then if you have long, big paper, like wrap it around so it goes right over the edge, or you can just trim it. That's no biggie. It is actually pretty good. Just have a little bit of dried medium in here. And that's what happens when I'm picking from the side because it's all dried up. That's going to happen regardless of how tight you cap your medium. Okay, just going to apply a little bit of medium on the edges. And then this little card, I can just stand it up on its side like this, once I cap everything, to dry. Alrighty. So that's that. Put that brush in water. Make sure any brushes you have medium in it, you put it in water. So while I put that aside, I'm going to turn around, come here. I'm going to trim this down. And depending on when you're watching this video, because the videos I release to my email subscribers first, the YouTube videos are unlisted first, and then I make them public later on. Oh, and I got some paint on there. So depending on when you're watching this, I totally forgot what I was going to say. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, depending on when you're watching this, just to show you where I get my quotes. So I have folders of all my inspirational quotes and single words, and I've got some stuff that's cut out. But what I also have is in my skull jar, I've got all these quotes cut up. As I go through them, cut them up, put them in here, and I'll pick them out and choose one, and I'll build the artwork based on that. That's why a lot of them are just all printed on paper. Then I have to make them stronger. So now I'm going to take a little pouncer, and what color do I want to make this? This you can leave to the end as well. So ultramarine blue, burnt sienna creates a chromatic black. There's water in the sponge. I don't want this to be opaque. And I'm just finishing the edges. And what this is also going to do is just create, because I cut the part where the paper was glued to the canvas paper, it'll just create another seal on the edges. And as I pounce, some of the paint is getting, the sponge is bending where it's going around. Let's see, there we go. So it's getting some paint on the front and the back. I'm just going to put that on top of here just to dry. And I'm going to hit this with the heat gun. If you can, let it dry naturally. I'm going to hit it with the heat gun just to save some time. Not going to hurt any. Unless your application of collage is super, super thick, then you'll want to let it dry naturally. I'm going to dry fit now, just to show you where I'm going with this. Because now it's just a matter of just applying everything. But I need to do an underpaint on this, but I need to know where to underpaint. So Kitty Cat's going to go there. Actually, the underlying color is not too bad. So that's going to go there. That's going to go there. And then the flowers are going to go all around the kitty cat's head. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. So what I want to do is I don't want to, because the tissue is transparent, the minute I glue this down, the green's going to show through, which is fine, but I don't want a green cat. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab a white charcoal pencil. Here it doesn't matter so much, but I'm just going to mark, and normally I would just eyeball this, so I'm going to think right about here, just so I know how far down to go. All I want to do, let's put that over there, is I just want to underlay, apply a block of white. I want to use a dry brush. Let's just use, I want to use a dry brush for this. I don't want to add any water. And all I'm going to do is start in the middle, which is going to be heavier, and then just fade it out. Think of a reverse vignette. Okay. Because we're going to put some more color on here. But the white's just going to block out a lot of the green. So now we're going to underlay some yellow ochre, or yellow oxide, which is going to make the cat more of a tabby color. There we go. See the difference? Now the cat's white. And we have a little bit of color coming out to the side, so that's not going to be too bad. I'm going to take some yellow oxide now, right on my dirty brush. I'm just going to come in here, start off in the middle, and then just fade it out. You don't need a lot. Turn. until I run out of paint. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush. And I'm going to grab, oh, I should have had this ready, baby wipe. Seriously, come on. For some reason, this dispenser is driving me absolutely bat crap crazy. Now I'm just going to, with the baby wipe, and I'm just going to gently blot and turn. I didn't squeeze out the excess moisture in here either. And this is just going to create that vignette. I took too much up here. Let's just feather this out a bit more. There we go. So just lay that down. That's actually pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. Now I'm going to squeeze out the excess. Just make sure. This part not to work because I have a horizontal piece of paper there. There we go. And I'm going to take that same brush. Actually, no, I'm going to go to the other flat brush because I don't want any white in my brush. And take a little bit of this yellow. Lazy bones. Take a little bit of that yellow. And just go around. There we go. Just create some texture. And using the Hansa yellow light, because it's transparent, I'm not losing any of that texture on the bottom. Then I take a little bit of the ultramarine blue, a little bit of the burnt sienna, a little bit more of the yellow. And just apply a thin layer. And again, using that heavy brush stroke, because it'll act like foliage underneath. You want to make sure it's a different color. I can even make it more blue or more yellow. I can take a little bit more blue and then I can just take the edge of the brush and just touch that in. It just creates the foliage. That's all. Like that. Oh, I like that. Like that. I'm going to hit this with the heat gun. Will not take long to dry at all. Whoops, there goes the kitty cat. Come back over here. And I no longer need any of this. Yes, I do. I don't need the white. But I need the burnt sienna. You do not want any white at all next to your piece. And I'm going to get a fresh brush here. Matte medium. Nice layered matte medium. Kitty cat right roughly, equal on the sides. No biggie. There we go. So now you can see the color showing through. And make sure that you've got a layer of the matte medium on top, because we're going to now come back over and just where the kitty cat is, we're going to put in a transparent layer of transparent yellow iron oxide. Although, to be honest with you, it's not necessary, because the actual yellow oxide is showing through quite nicely. I just want to intensify that just a little bit more. So making sure that I have a good seal on that. I'm going to take one of my texture tools, and the kit comes, well, the kit that I have comes with the palette knife and a bunch of palette knives. These are so flexible. Sometimes when you use the credit cards, because they don't bend as easy, they tear. But this is so flexible. Doesn't tear at all. And yes, I just wiped the excess off of my my apron. Beauty. There we go. Still gonna need that, and put that aside. Make sure you clean that. I'm gonna put that in water. That's almost dry. Gonna hit that with the heat gun just for a sec. I'm really rinsing out my brush. Now, anytime you're working with transparent layers, make sure you do not have any white or any type of opaque color in your brush. The last thing you want to do is make your transparent layer opaque because of, you know, a dirty brush. Transparent yellow iron oxide, just a little bit, along with some clean water. All I'm doing is a light tint, and this brush is way too big. I'm going to go to a small brush, a little number three round. And I'm using water for this. And all I'm going to do is just a super, and yes, I just, again, blotted my brush on my apron. Super light, thin layer. Where there's more of the yellow green showing through. And by keeping this transparent, the black lines, you don't lose them. If this was opaque, you'd lose them. Do you know what would be really neat if I could make those eyes blue? The teal blue. Should I do that? No. You know why? Because there's only a speck showing, and that's the white of the eye, so you can't really make that blue. I thought that would be kind of neat. Alrighty. Kitty cat. So now, I'm going to use this stuff up first, because normally all I have to do now is basically just finish the edges, so I don't have to waste the paint. So I'm going to take the yellow, a little bit of phthalo blue and burnt sienna, blot on a paper towel, and I just want to finish the edge here. Have a nice contrast, blotting on a paper towel. I'm going to push, when pushing this, now this time I'm dragging, usually I'll do this, but I'm pushing that in there because I want to create that extra seal in between the tissue and the paper, stuff that's gone to the edge. Okay, so now to show you on the back. So when you're doing this, see how the sponge is bending over, and you get some of the paint on there. It looks quite nice. You can also just go from outside in on an angle, and then you get that nice edge, or you can just flatten out the sponge a bit more and you get a more uneven edge. It depends on the style you're looking for. And if you were working on, you know how in the beginning I did all that rough gesso? When doing this picks up all those brush strokes, which looks absolutely amazing. So just by using it more flat now, see how all the different effects? You can use round, super light pressure. You get to get a nice soft look. So it all depends. So I'm just using up the paint because I was challenged. I was challenged. I am challenged. I was challenged by one of my students to stop wasting paint. I do admit that that's one of my downfalls is when I'm creating art, I focus very little on housekeeping. But I'm always telling, you know, my focus for all my, especially for beginners, buy less colors and buy better quality paint. They'll go further. And problem is that, you know, practice what I preach. You know, I do waste paint, so it's kind of going against what I'm saying about, you know, saving money and all that stuff. So, but at the same time, I don't want to spend, you know, 20 minutes in a video showing you how not to waste paint. But I figure doing it this way, Kill two birds with one stone. So working dark, then working light. Oh, I see how I see some of that pattern there. I don't even know if it was off camera there. That's just because there's more paint on one side. So just alter. And there's really no wrong way. There's a piece of tissue glue there. There's really no wrong way of doing this, because what I usually do is put a piece of rice paper on top of this and sign my name and all that stuff. But this I can just actually just write it right on there. So going right from the paint to the card, it's a bit riskier because there's more paint. So that's why it's nice. Stay with the edges and then bring it in. So now I won't have to put a piece of rice paper on there. There we go. How beautiful is that? So there we go. So you got another lesson in here. And any leftover paint, throw it into a journal or something, or blot it up with a baby wipe, and then use that baby wipe in another piece of art. That may be actually something I'm going to do. Oh, handprint. Well, let's see if I can use this in another piece of art. So I'll just take that, and then I'll dry this, and then once it's dry, then I'll rinse it under water so there's none of that baby lotion stuff in here. So when it actually comes to collaging, it doesn't affect anything. Phthalo blue, super high staining. So keep that in mind when you're using it. There we go. Look at that. There's a whole bunch of backgrounds there for abstract work. All right. Just quickly, just super duper fast. We are almost done, people. And I'm going to use that same small brush. So now I'm going to end up having to cut this. So I'm going to go upwards. So I'm going to put matte medium on there. You can use a glue stick if you want. I'm using this pretty thickly. It's all little nooks and crannies. So when you push it in, it's going to come through, but it's going to be transparent. It is going to have a matte finish though. So if you want a glossy finish, then use a glossy medium. And I'm going to have to use pressure on that because that piece is just a little bit bent. And I know like a glue gun would work for this. Actually, I can leave some of the little branches sticking up. That actually might have some texture, but there's the quote I'm putting on here. Oh, crap, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so using a glue gun, I know myself, I would have burnt myself badly. The Ryobi gun that Joe bought me, absolutely love it. I'm still having a little bit of trouble controlling it because it's a big one, but it is battery powered. So I'm just putting a little bit of medium on the very edge. So when I do cut it, the page will still be flat. Now, if this was miniature art where you can just leave it like this, you don't have to cut it. And actually, I may not even cut it. I will have to wait to see when it dries. You don't have to cut it, but if you're giving it away as an artist trading card, like if it's 2.5 by 3.5, then you should trim the edges. A lot of people have special albums for these. And I think I am just going to leave this. Because what you can also do, the person receiving it, they can always cut it if they want. Just lifting up a little bit of these branches before this dries. And this is something I wasn't intending on doing, but you let the art tell you what to do. Go with the gut feeling. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. It's your artwork. Just go with the flow. Love that. I'm not liking the white on that, so I think I'm going to tie in the yellow oxide into the label or the quote. Super small speck. And I think with this, I think I left the cap open on this. it's kind of thick. And use the same brush. And now I'm going to tie the kitty cat into this kitty cat color. And because it's transparent, it doesn't cover up the dark on the edges. That's better. That ties that in. You can also make this like a completely different color. Let's say like magenta or something. So let me just put this aside. And that dries. Now I'm just going to get medium. I'm just going to put a little bit in the lid here. And now for the flowers. These are the most beautiful little flowers. So I'm thinking I'm going to do a dry fit now. So one there. One underneath where it's lifting up. I think I'm going to have to add a little bit of contrast there. I may have to paint a little bit of that with some white, because the yellow is there's not much contrast in the background. So there's a little bit here. A little bit here. Put that right in the crook of the kitty cat's neck, or his ear, I should say, behind his ear. Glue gun would be better for this, I believe. But all I'm thinking about is when I did this last time, I burned myself so bad I couldn't do videos for 2 weeks. And then when I overlay some paint on this, I'm going to put another layer of matte medium. I'm going to put another layer of matte medium on this to protect the flowers. I want the leaves to be in front. Oh, these are so delicate. There we go. Oops. Let's see, we're going to put you, little one, right there. I'm going to take a little bit of white. Oops, too much. And even with the brush with the matte medium on there. And I'm just going to hit just a few pieces, not everything. Just dry brush over some of the edges. Just a little bit. Oh, that was a complete waste of paint. See, there we go. Not doing what I'm preaching. And now to apply this. Again, glue gun would be good for this. I can't wait for DecoArt to release the heavy gel medium that they're developing. It's in the catalog, because that would just get into the nooks and crannies of the branches. Gently push that in there. There, done. And I'm going to take a little bit of matte medium, and I'm just going to touch over the card. So especially where there's stuff that's collaged, this will create another seal. Oops, that little flower came off. Especially when you have elements like this, you want to try to add extra protection. I'm going to put some matte medium all over the kitty cat. You want to add some protection on there. Now what I should have done was let the paint completely dry for sure, because now I can't tell if I smeared any of that white paint, but that's all right. And just add a little bit of extra. And I'm doing these videos, other than the drying time, these videos are being done in real time. I'm not speeding anything up. I'm getting more positive feedback in the real time videos versus the stuff that's accelerated. Because if you know what I'm doing, you can just fast forward. But my videos are all geared towards beginners, so they can sit and they can watch. So you can fast forward if you know why I'm doing something, or you just want to skip ahead to the finished stage. But there we go. All right, we're gonna let this dry. I'm thinking probably about an hour for that to dry, and then we come back, we'll see what it looks like. So I hope that you enjoyed this project. And one of the tips that I'm starting to let people know is that when you've created your artwork before, like it's if you're doing for a swap or for your own records, avoid varnishing until you've taken pictures. This sounds really, really basic, but it's a habit that I always varnish my pieces during a video or during a class. The photography is awful. And usually I do my photography outside for some of my pieces, but it's pouring rain and can't do anything. So leave the varnishing till after you've taken your pictures, and then varnish your piece. Then you can take some pictures. That way you can see the difference. I love, with some designs, I really like the high gloss, but photography doesn't work so much. Anyways, so there's my little tip. I'm going to be popping in little sprinkles of tips throughout some videos just to make things a little bit easier for you. All right, so I'd love to see your rendition of this. So what you can do is you can share it with me either via the private Facebook group or by email. Links to both of those are on my website at artplace.ca. And I would love it if you would give me a thumbs up, first of all, if you enjoyed this. Comment below the video, just some ideas of inspiration. If you're not a cat person, would you have used a dog or would you have used another animal? Just to give me some ideas of how you would have done it. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That way you won't miss anything. All right. So I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea because my hands are freezing. I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. And until I see you in the next video, stay inspired.